Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I just finished the book 1984 by George Orwell, and it's an amazing book. It's very scary, and of course I was trying to see, in the Quran if there's any kind of reference to something like that. And of course I, came to the story of Musa alayhi salam and Pharaoh. And if you zoom into the often kind of overlooked or underappreciated story of the magicians and Pharaoh, we can see a very similar, if not like basically the same thing happening. And so for those who don't know, 1984 is about a government basically that is so powerful and is so absolute that they determine what is fact. And so they have control over absolute truth. So if they determine something happened in the past, that thing happened. It's not that they say it happened, but rather it's that it actually happened. And so if you look at the story of Musa alayhi salam, so when the magicians, when they realize that Musa alayhi salam is a true prophet, and they believe in Musa alayhi salam and they publicly proclaim this, the response of Pharaoh is very interesting, because he says that آمنتم به, or آمنتم به قبل أن آذن لكم, that do you believe in him before I can give you permission? So it's very interesting how Pharaoh considered himself as like the authority of even what they could or could not believe in. That before they believed in Musa, they would not have to consult their judgment or see for themselves, but they would have to request permission from Pharaoh, who is basically this kind of, he would consider himself like an absolute authority. And that's what's meant by when he said in the Quran, Ana Rabbukumul A'la, that I am your supreme Lord, right? He considered himself the absolute authority, right? Not that he considered himself a god in the sense that he was like immortal or infallible, like he wouldn't bleed or something, but no, he considered himself the ultimate authority. And so we can see that over here with the magicians, that instead of questioning how they could believe in Musa, he questioned how they could believe in Musa before asking permission, or before Pharaoh giving permission for them to do so. And then not only that, but then he goes on to reconstruct the past. So then he says, إِنَّهُ لَكَبِيرُكُمْ الَّذِي عَلَّمَكُمُ السِّحْرَ, that Musa is actually one of your seniors, and he is the one that actually taught you magic. And if you think about this, because it was Pharaoh's idea of Musa going up against the magicians, so it was basically like he must have had a lot of propaganda, a lot of kind of propaganda going around, how the magicians are actually the people of the truth, how the magicians are actually going to win, they're going to prevail against the falsehood of Moses. And if you look at the tafsir, you'll also find this, that the people of Egypt, not just the Egyptians, but this extended to the Bani Israel as well, that they fully believed that Musa alayhi salam was not going to prevail. They believed that Moses, even his own people, even Musa alayhi salam's own people, they believed that Musa alayhi salam was not going to win against Pharaoh. So we can just imagine how the actual Egyptians, like not the Banu Israel, but the Coptics, how they would have been, conditioned to believe about the magicians. So they would think that the magicians are actually the heroes, and they are going to prevail against the falsehood of Musa. But now it's getting turned around, and now Pharaoh is saying that actually the past was not what I have told you before, but actually innahu lakabirukum, that that Musa is actually one of the magicians, and he's actually the kabir, the great magician. So he's a senior magician, and he is the one that actually taught the magicians how to do magic. الذي علمكم السحر. He is the one that taught you to do magic. And then he goes off to punish them. And so just from this instance, if we zoom in, we can see how Pharoah, basically, just like in 1984, how the government reconstructs the past and considers it as absolute. In the same way, Pharoah is reconstructing the past here, and he is considering it absolute. But then he goes on further to mention, and this is another nukta, another very small point. But when he punishes the magicians, he does so in a very gruesome manner. He says one thing that's notable, that he says, I'm gonna punish you and we'll see whose punishment lasts longer, or whose punishment أشد عذابا, that who is more severe, وأبقى, and whose is longer lasting. And one of the things in 1984 is that the government, or the party, their outlook was that they will forever be there. That the future, and this is one where the main character is being tortured. He is told that if you want to think about the future, think about a boot that is crushing a human skull. And that boot is always going to be crushing that human, face. And so in the same way, Pharaoh here is telling the magicians that I want you to determine whose punishment is longer lasting. And so that's also another interesting comparison. And there's many more. If we reflect on the stories of the Quran and the stories that we have, and they're both really good stories, but the thing about the one in the Quran is that actually happened. That these statements were actually made. It's not a work of fiction, but it's a historical event that took place. And just like how we know that Pharaoh was ultimately destroyed, that Musa ultimately prevailed over Pharaoh, so too when we read these stories of the Quran, or when we read these fictional stories, and a lot of people read books like 1984, and you can become easily despondent if you compare that book to the reality around you. But when we look into the Quran, we can find that there is always raja. There's always hope. So that was an interesting comparison, and I thought I'd just share that.